All right, welcome back. We're talking a little bit of draft look ahead with Matt Miller, who does an amazing job covering the NFL draft, ESPN senior draft analyst. I mean, it seems like we've known him for years. When he was back at Bleacher Report, going way, way back, and now he has carved out a huge role for himself at ESPN. He's one of the best in the business. Matt Miller joins us on the show, and we're going to talk a little draft. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you guys having me.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this draft coming up. I mean, a lot of people have talked about the 2027 draft being such a great haul. How would you describe the draft that's coming up, 2026?
It's not 2027. I think it's going to be comparable to 2025, where there's good players at the top. There's not maybe those generational prospects that sometimes we key in on, but it's a really good year for defensive line play, defensive end, defensive tackles. It's a really good year for corners. It's a good year at the top at tight end and running back, but it is a year that kind of outskills top wide receivers.
Let's talk a little bit about who you have at the top. You have Fernando Mendoza. Bay Area fans know him really well. You have the Jets making a trade with Tennessee to trade up for Francisco Mendoza. And Dante Moore from Oregon going in the second pick overall, and then you've got Ty Simpson from Bama, another quarterback going 5. Are you pretty confident in the quarterback rankings there, or do you think it's going to change between now and draft day?
I think those are the three guys that we're all watching. And the question is going to be which of them declare for the draft, because Ty Simpson is a first-year starter at Alabama. He's got about 10 games under his belt. Dante Moore, first year as a starter at Oregon. He started 5 games at UCLA back in 2023. But, NFL scouts now really, they have this number. They want 25 starts from a college quarterback. And obviously Moore and Simpson are going to be way under that. Mendoza, because of what he did at Cal before he got to Indiana, is obviously up there in terms of starts. But that is, I think, one of the keys when trying to evaluate this class is these quarterbacks that just don't have the starts that they need, that teams want to see. That is a big issue when trying to scout these guys.
The 49ers may wind up trading Mac Jones this summer. I'm not sure, or this spring. How do you feel about Mac Jones and whatever market he may have created for himself? I know you're, at least once upon a time were a Niner fan. How much of Jones have you caught so far?
A lot. And I will say this, it's really smart of the front office to have done a 2-year deal with Mac Jones, because you're right. There is going to be a market for his services, because we look at those available quarterbacks, right? Let's say all 3 of them declare for the draft. There's more than 3 teams that have a needed quarterback. And there's going to be teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers that are not going to have a top 5 or top 10 draft pick that have a need at that position. It happens every year. And so I think we're in this age right now of the bounce back quarterback. We look at Sam Darnold, we look at Baker Mayfield, we look at Daniel Jones even. And so I think the Niners were really wise to do a 2-year deal for Mac Jones so that they can look at a team maybe like the Las Vegas Raiders, who have a need, but maybe won't be in position to get a quarterback at the top of the draft, or a team like, the Pittsburgh Steelers or whomever else it might be that's in that same spot of quarterback's going to fly off the board. We know that. So to have Mac Jones out there as probably the most attractive trade candidate, at least as of right now, is really good for both for Mac Jones and for San Francisco. So they can get some draft capital for a player that they basically rehabilitated his stock. And it's great for Mac to get another chance to be a starter outside of, what happened in New England.
Offensive tackle. I think 49ers have offensive tackle marked down as, man, gotta get, they got to find the replacement for Trent Williams probably in this upcoming draft, my guess. But you have them going defensive tackle, which I don't think is wrong necessarily, because defensive tackle is where they've invested their draft capital. But before we get to your pick for them, talk to me a little bit about the offensive tackle class. There's Spencer Fano, there's Maui Goa, there's Caden Proctor, there's Caleb Lomu. I kind of like Jennings Dunker from Iowa. There's gigantic Isaiah World from Oregon, Caleb Tiernan from Northwestern. I kind of like Xavier Chaplin from Auburn. Another guy that's kind of jumped on my radar, and I don't know if he's going to be in the draft, but is it Emil from Notre Dame? The offensive tackles look pretty good. How do you look at how many tackles do you think are round 1 worthy, and what can you share with us about the class?
Yeah, it's a class that was really hyped headed into the season. Because it was, the guys you mentioned, the two Utah tackles. It was Nago at Miami, Caden Proctor at Alabama. Was a 5-star recruit, a top tier player. He started from day one at Alabama. So it was really hyped. And a lot like the quarterback class, it has not lived up to those expectations. But they're still good players, right? And in some cases, there's players that we didn't expect to be those top tier guys have maybe risen, or some of the top tier guys have slid. So I do look at someone like Caleb Tiernan, who's played really, really well for Northwestern. Before the season, he was looked at as maybe a round 3, round 4 player. I think now late 1, early 2 is in range for him. And then we've had guys like Caden Proctor. I think his stock has dropped this year because of inconsistent play, but it's a good tackle class. And when I did my mock draft this week for the 49ers, I think I have had them taking a left tackle for the past 4 years, or a right tackle after Mike McGlinchey, right? And so at some point it's like, are they as worried about it as we are? It doesn't seem like they are, because they're not even investing round 2 or round 3 picks in the position, right? So that does kind of live in the back of your head of like, what are they waiting for to find Trent's eventual replacement? This might be the year to do it, but there are more right tackles than left tackles this year. Spencer Fano plays right tackle for Utah. Some teams see him as a center because of size. Nago is a right tackle for Miami. Caden Proctor, because he moves exceptionally well for 360 pounds, but there might be a push to get him on the right side because of his size, because of some of his consistency limitations. So right now, it feels like more of a right tackle class than a left tackle class.
Sometimes it's rare that we see guards go high, but sometimes there's that Quentin Nelson, right? There's that dominant guy. There's 2 real physical guys that I've seen so far that are impressed me. The Penn State kid, Vega Ione, and then Emmanuel Pregnon from Oregon. I mean, just 6'5", 320. He's just looks like he was weaned on a Nautilus machine. I mean, the guy just absolute ripped, and both those guys are impressive physically. Is there a dominant guard in this year's class?
You named the 2 of them. Those are the 2 guys that I would have up there. And that's taking away the players that scouts think might move from tackle to guard, right? That happens every year. We're going to hear those conversations. But I think Ione from Penn State is a round 1 player, in my opinion. He's just incredibly consistent in the run and pass protection. He has his NFL starter traits. There's not a lot of weakness to his game, despite the fact that the Penn State has actually struggled to run the ball this year. That's not on him. He's agile. He's a people mover. And then Pregnon is another one of those guys. Transfers into Oregon, and his stock has really jumped up this year. I think the athletic tools are really impressive. Oregon has become a pretty good O-line factory the past couple of years. We saw one go in the first round last year. So I would not be surprised if Pregnon's in that late first round, maybe early second round range, just based on how well he's played this year.
Let's talk about the guy you did mock to the Niners, and that's Caden McDonald from Ohio State, 6'3", 325. He's got that bulk to play inside and be a run stuffer, but he also has, quick feet to rush the quarterback. I think he's got some pressures and 3 or 4 sacks. How do you see McDonald? Is he a riser that won't even be where you have him selected right now, or do you think he's going to be there?
I think there's a chance he's there, but he has been a riser this year. Ohio State turned over their entire defensive line from last year. So him stepping in, there was some hype. You'd heard good things about him, but it took until we actually get to see him play to realize where he's at, how he's developed from last year. He's outstanding. He really is. Like, what he does in the run game, I don't know if there's a better run-stopping defensive tackle in this class. He's only a junior, so there's a chance he goes back to school. But he also has, like you said, that movement upfield. He can rush the passer. And I think it's something that's fun with mock drafts that it takes like a discourse that you can't always have on Twitter, or you can't always write when you're doing a 32-team mock draft, is that there are other positions that I would love to give the 49ers in round 1. But those positions don't always have a player that's there, or a player of value. So like left tackle, you would love for a left tackle to be there when the Niners come up to pick. But as recent drafts have shown us, those left tackles come off the board pretty early unless there's some type of question mark about the prospect. So that is true with the way that this mock draft played out. And to have someone like Caden McDonald, I think he is a tone setter for your defensive line. He is in a lot of ways what they wanted Javon Hargrave to be, and he didn't ultimately become for them. So having someone who's 21 years old, growing into that position, and can be, you hope, an anchor and someone that draws attention away from Bosa, eventually away from Michael Williams, who they drafted in the first round last year.
Matt Miller with us, ESPN draft analyst, stopping by. And, I know you don't want to be critical necessarily of, any NFL general managers. It probably doesn't behoove somebody in your position to be critical of these guys, but just to try to be as candid as we can be on Lynch. I mean, I think Lynch is a great face of the franchise. I think he's given the 49ers so many good moments as far as how he represents them across the league. He's made some amazing trades, Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams, but he does have a lot of misses in the first 3 rounds. And I was looking at it the other day, and I counted kind of 18 misses in the first 3 rounds in the first 9 drafts, which is obviously too many. How would you evaluate their ability in this draft? I mean, they found Brock Purdy as Mr. Irrelevant, and they've been incredible on day 3 and maybe even more incredible with undrafted free agents annually, Azeez Al-Shaair and others. But at the top of the draft, it's been kind of hit and miss. How do you evaluate Lynch?
Yeah, draft is hard. It really is. That's step one. I also think the 49ers under John Lynch have historically been a very good team. It is a lot harder to draft at pick 31 than it is at pick 3. You're starting to, you build differently when you are a perennial Super Bowl contender because you're thinking about plugging holes. You make it to the Super Bowl and you lose to the Chiefs and you think, all right, let's plug that hole. We were that close. We had a lead. We had the lead. How do we plug that hole to close out this game? And so you draft with that mindset instead of, like what some teams do, which is to draft with the mindset of, we got to build. We got to build from the ground up. It's a little easier to hit when you have a roster that has a lot of holes. It's harder to hit when you have a Super Bowl contending roster. So I will give John credit in that regard of it. His job is harder than it is, the job of whether, maybe you're the Jets or the Browns where everything's basically a need. But I do think that they're a little bit better on day 3 because that's when it feels like they draft for their scheme. George Kittle, Brock Purdy, the list goes on. Like Juan Jennings, like you're drafting for your scheme. You're grabbing a player that is going to plug into your culture, to what you want to do. And they've had a lot of hits there. I think in round 1 where they've got trouble is overdrafting based on traits. And Michael Williams is a rookie. He could turn out to be a Hall of Fame defensive end, but I do think he fits into that mold of it was a need at the time, maybe not a primary need given some of the other holes on the roster, but they sometimes get, I think, enamored with the physical traits, and that leads to overdrafting. But some of those have worked out, and I'm excited to see what Ricky Pearsall becomes. I feel like he was a guy that was slightly overdrafted based on coming off a Super Bowl where you're like, okay, we got to get younger at receiver. We got to get more explosive at receiver. So Ricky comes in. So hopefully, Michael can ramp up, down the stretch and over the next couple of years.
And some of these things take time. It's like I think Nick Martin's going to be a really good pick for them out of Oak State. They're getting a lot of heat right now for that pick because he is not playing very much. But I mean, he played last week, 14 snaps. He made 7 tackles and 5 of them were solo. So, I mean, I think sometimes we all just need to kind of take a breath and give these picks. Some guys play well as rookies. Some guys don't emerge until halfway through the year. Some guys emerge in year 2. Sometimes it's year 3. It's not always it doesn't always arrive in a convenient package like the fans and some people in the media would like. 2 last ones before we let you go, and we appreciate your time, Matt. Edge rush. I think Reuben Bain's probably going to be the first edge rusher. The kid Falk from Alabama is really intriguing. The Niners like big edge rushers like Mikel that can set the edge. But because they drafted Mikel, they still don't have that guy who can burn the edge, who can really dial up pressure. Mikel's almost like an undersized interior guy. Who's your favorite late first round edge guy that you think fits their scheme? Because the 240 guys, the James Pierces, they seem like they shy away from those guys. They want somebody who's like 260, 270, who can set an edge. I know you're there in Missouri and probably have seen a lot of Zion Young and Damon Wilson, the second. But do you have favorites? Dennis Sutton from Penn State's a pretty good player. Is there a favorite edge player that you have that's going to be there, let's say, second half of round 1?
Well, you mentioned my 2 Missouri guys, Damon Wilson, the second, Zion Young, and I've been hyping them up before the season even started. I think they're fantastic players. They're so different. Wilson is a little bit more of that speed and length. Zion is a well-rounded. I mean, he's a great edge-setting pass rusher. I actually had a scout, not from the 49ers, text me yesterday. It's like, please tell me you've watched Zion Young. I have indeed. And he's probably going to go, early round 2. So he would be in that range that you're talking about there. I think TJ Parker from Clemson's interesting too. He was billed as maybe being a top 10 pick this year. He has not played up to that standard. Clemson has really struggled once again defensively, and that's affected the stock of some of their key players. But he fits what you're talking about. Somebody that does have the heavy hands that can set the edge, but also does have some juice. And in a perfect world, you're finding guys that can do it all, right? That's your Nick Bosa's, your Myles Garrett, players like that. I have found that players coming out of college who have a power element to their game are going to be a lot more successful in the NFL than guys who are just pure stand-up speed players. So I do agree with the Niners, philosophy there. If you want somebody that can stack against the run, somebody that can bring a bull rush or a heavy hand to their pass rush profile is super important.
Last one for you, and really appreciate you stopping by. Wide receiver, there's a lot of talk that Ayuk could get dealt. JJ may be allowed to walk away in free agency. Pearsall's yet to fulfill the potential. I really like Jordan Watkins. I'm pretty confident he's going to play when they get him on the field and get him rolling. But they could go wide receiver. They really could. And it's an intriguing group this year. I mean, Carnell Tate, Chris Bell, KC Concepcion. I really love the kid from Bama, Jeremy Bernard. There's he does. And just something about him, just as he shows up for the W, he's all about the win. You can tell he's a great competitor. Who do you think wide receiver wise, is there somebody that you really like? Some of these guys go in round 2, sometimes round 3, and Terrell Owens was a round 3 guy.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what the Niners look for, because Ricky was such a vertical stretch guy. He's a deep threat, a yak player. So it's, okay, what are you looking for? Are you looking for Jeremy Bernard, who takes some snaps at running back, and he's built, like Debo Samuel, young Debo? Do you look at Chris Bell from Louisville, who's 6'2", 220, and is going to give you that physical element after the catch, he has speed, but he has power? Or do you look at someone like Mekhi Lemon from USC, who's a great route runner, but he's 5'11", 190. He's not a burner. He's more Lad McConkey, and how he's going to get open, how he's going to create some of the things that he does as a receiver. So I'm fascinated by that, of like, what do they see as the perfect, set of wide receivers? You have Ricky Pearsall, and like you mentioned, if Ayuk is back or not, if Juan Jennings is back or not, that's going to change the dynamic. But this is an intriguing receiver class. There's not that Tedero McMillan. There's not the Travis Hunter, those guys that are going to go top 5 probably. Jordan Tyson from Arizona State, I think, is the best, but he's, once again dealing with injuries. So that's going to be something that we have to figure out once we get to that portion of the draft. But I like the receiver class in round 2 quite a bit. I think round 3, there's some pretty good depth as well. But it would be fascinating to see what the 49ers are valuing. What are they looking for in an offense that's built around Brock Purdy? What type of wide receiver play do they need?
If they're standing in the 3rd round and they're looking at Malachi Fields from Notre Dame and Nick Harbor from South Carolina, 2 big, huge receivers, and I'm not sure how either is going to run for the stopwatch. I think Harbor's going to run really well. I'm not sure about Fields. Who do you like more between those 2 guys?
I think I would take Fields, and some of this is probably just, how long I've been doing this. I still get scared off by players who have traits without production to match it. Harbor still, he still struggles catching the ball sometimes. It's just he's not a finished product at wide receiver. And sometimes that turns into DK Metcalf. DK could run like 3 routes coming out of college, and he became one of the best receivers in the NFL because he worked and he developed. I think I've been a little snake bit by guys that when you bet so hard on development, it's okay, well, what are you coming in with? Like, what's your ground floor? Where are you at? I think Fields, especially if he plays like he did in the playoffs last year, his floor is higher.
Last thought I'll give you on the way out the door. I had a nice little sit down. I'm doing the big game, the Cal Stanford big game. They call it the big game here, of course, but it's not really a big game. I'm doing the pregame show. So I went out and interviewed JKS from Cal, and Matt, he's a true freshman, so he won't be on your radar for a couple years now. But wow, what a prospect that kid is, and he's just grounded and real and very, very impressive. You got to study the Cal quarterback. And I also got, on your way out the door, do you have a thought on Dylan Raiola? I watched a lot of quarterbacks this year, and I've been told that Arch Manning's great. I've been told all these different guys are great. I don't know if Arch Manning's great, but I kind of like Raiola from Nebraska.
I can't watch him without like being stuck with the Mahomes thing that he's doing, So it's like there's that part of me that like just like okay, just go be your own guy,
Yeah.
maybe change numbers next year because it's so distracting, that it's like watching, someone play Mahomes, right? But I mean, I'm intrigued by his talent. I don't think he has the arm strength to get away with a lot of the things he tries to do. That
Gotcha.
would be my criticism of him. But I love the mentality. I love the toughness. I just think he's somebody that he's trying to get away with things that he doesn't quite have the tools to do.
I don't know if you've heard any anecdotes about JKS from Cal, but man, he's coming. He's coming.
I have. I was hearing about him when he was at Elite 11. People were saying, just wait. And I hope that Cal can hold on to him because we're in an era of free agency in college. Yep. So my hope is that the Bears find a way to keep him right there.
Hey, man, you're the best. Thanks for jumping on. We appreciate you.
Of course, man. Thank you so much.